Good evening, and welcome to Thinking Thursday. I'm glad to have you here who's ever on and listening. We are glad to start a new topic. Tonight, we are going to be discussing Alzheimer's, dementia, and generally overall brain health and what that means. But you know what we have to do first. We've got to breathe. We will have a guest whom I'll introduce shortly, but first let's get our breathe on. For those of you who it's your first time listening to us, we start every week by taking a few deep, cleansing, relaxing breaths. So here is what we do. I'm going to have you breathe in to the count of four. You'll breathe in and you'll breathe out to the count of four. The purpose of deep breaths is to allow you to relax, allow your body to ah, get full of oxygen that's good and healthy, and to take away some of the cares of the day because you've allowed yourself to breathe and relax just a little bit. So breathe in, two, three, four, out, two, three, four. In, two, three, four, out, two, three, four. Let's do one more. In, two, three, four, out, two, three, four. Now, the purpose, as I said, of doing that is to allow you just to de stress for a moment. When I look at everything that's going on in the world right now, there's a lot of stress. We've talked for months about the election. Well, it's still not over because we don't know who the winner is, and that's causing people stress. So, we want to leave some of the stress behind today as we talk about Alzheimer's and brain health. Because, wow, that's something that impacts so many people. Before I introduce my guest, if you're on, I want to encourage you to share this or start a watch party. Invite others. This is a topic that impacts so many people, so we want as many people to hear who can benefit. So share it. Start a party. Get the word out. I want to introduce my guest tonight. And my guest is, let me put her name and picture up, Veronica Shanklin. And she is the founder of Dementia Care Warriors. And she's going to tell you just what that is, how it got started, and everything that's going on. She's an awesome young lady, and I'm going to let her first just introduce yourself. Just first us who you are before we start anything, get any questions. Who are you, Veronica? And tell us who you are.
Okay. Like she said, my name is Veronica Shanklin. I am excited to join you tonight to talk about this really important topic. I am a full time caregiver. I'm also a very passionate advocate for caregivers in the Alzheimer's community. And I also founded a nonprofit called Dementia Care Warriors, where we provide tools, tips, and resources for Alzheimer's caregivers.
Wow. So that's a lot being a caregiver. We're going to find out exactly what does that mean over the course of this conversation, but I want to get personal a minute. What led you to have an interest in Alzheimer's and dementia and just what's your story?
Okay, let's see if I can tell you the short version. So about 7 years ago, I was living in Chicago. I was a marketing executive. I was single, bachelorette, just kind of living my best life in the big city. And I had lived there for about 10 years at that point, and I was um, coming home back and forth to Dallas, which is my hometown, and my mom was a caregiver for my grandmother who had Alzheimer's. And so coming back and forth to Dallas, I kind of realized that my mom was struggling with taking care of my grandmother. And it eventually all came to a head one day when my mom called me and said she was following an ambulance to the hospital with my grandmother in it. And my grandmother had gotten so worked up, she had physically lashed out at my mom and ended up having a seizure. And so it was clear that my mom really didn't have any control of the situation. And so I ended up flying home and basically took over. I talked to the doctors, I talked to the social worker. We ended up, my grandmother was able to go to a skilled nursing facility for a few weeks. And so I had to figure that out. They basically gave me a huge stack of papers with nursing homes on it and said, pick one in the next 24 hours. Um, so I knew nothing about Alzheimer's, nursing homes, or really senior citizens for that matter, but that was pretty much the beginning of my journey. And then a year later, my mom also received the Alzheimer's diagnosis. And so that was about 7 years ago. I've since, like I said, become a really passionate advocate for caregivers. I've served on the board of the Greater Dallas chapter of the Alzheimer's Association, as well as several other nonprofits in the community. I do education, speaking. I've gone to DC twice for the Alzheimer's Advocacy Forum, where we talk to legislators about um, funding for Alzheimer's and just trying to get them to understand how important this cause is and how we need more funding for research. And then eventually in 2019, I started Dementia Care Warriors. And so we do um, education workshops for caregivers to talk about topics, everything from legal and financial planning to communication to brain health to just navigating the caregiver journey. And then we host a support group, or I host a support group. And then I also have on my website for Dementia Care Warriors a ton of resources and information about Alzheimer's. So
Wow,
that's it.
awesome. From marketing person to caregiver. That is a big journey. That's a big step. Sounds like you're a pretty selfless person. You want to, do what's right by your family, and I applaud you for that. That is
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank you.
So, in the role you stand, you are an educator too,
Yes.
because you have a lot of information to share. And I want to
Hmm.
start out with a question that people, I think, really need to know, and that is, what is the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? People hear it, they don't understand the difference. And because you're this dementia warrior, a caregiver,
Right.
and an educator, I feel like you're able to answer this question.
Absolutely. That is a very common question, and it's a very good question. And so I usually describe it, I think the best way to describe it is we say that dementia is an umbrella term for a group of brain disorders. And so these brain disorders affect everything from thinking to memory to judgment to personality. And so under this umbrella, there are different types of dementia. And Alzheimer's is the most common type of dementia, but there are other types of dementia, such as vascular dementia, Parkinson's disease. A lot of people don't realize is a type of dementia, dementia with Lewy bodies. And then there's a long list of types of dementia, but Alzheimer's is the most common.
Hmm. In looking at that and looking at Alzheimer's, how common is it? Do you have any statistics or any information about just how prevalent is Alzheimer's?
Alzheimer's is really prevalent in the African American community, and actually, African Americans are twice as likely to have Alzheimer's than their white counterparts. So it's something that's really affecting us, um, and yeah, it's very prominent in our community.
I heard something today. I was just casually speaking to someone about tonight's topic, and there's
Hmm.
some new, you may not know about this, and this is just some new research that I just found out, so I'm just going to share it with everybody, and we can all, research it. There is some new research linking um, Alzheimer's as they're calling it like a diabetes type 3. In terms of some studies, and I believe they're actually in England that are going on right now, looking at glucose levels in the brain and different things they're related to Alzheimer's and dementia patients. Have you heard anything about that?
I have. I haven't much into it. Just on a surface level, though, I've heard that. over time. Yes.
And I thought about that because when we think about in the African American community, you said how prevalent it is and how we're at a greater risk of dementia. We're at a greater risk of everything living in America,
Of
unfortunately.
course. Right.
And that's why I thought it was just so important that we talk about it, about what is
Mhm.
this thing called dementia and Alzheimer's.
Mhm.
Um, Before I get into support, can you tell me what are, and we have, let me speak to the audience for a moment. And I see someone who says they've taken on a schizophrenic uncle. And later on in this topic, we're going to talk about just caregivers in general.
Mhm.
Um, so we have a lot going on here that's already of interest. Let me say this. Can you give me some descriptors? What does a person with Alzheimer's look like? What are some symptoms that we might
Okay.
see?
Um, so physically, especially in the early stages, a lot of times you would not even know that a person has Alzheimer's. It's just by looking at them physically.
Mm-hmm.
As the disease progresses, of course, their body starts to decline, and then that's when physical symptoms might start to appear. But just even in the early stages, what you see is things like memory changes, concentration changes, difficulty with reasoning and abstract thinking, impaired judgment. So, making decisions that probably are not something they would make if they did not have the disease, confusion with time and place, withdrawal from work or social activities is also something else that you see, and then just in general personality changes. So those are some of the things that you might start noticing early on that might
Mm-hmm.
make you want to take a closer look or make you think that maybe we might need to talk to a doctor about this.
So tell us a little more about your managing your grandmother and now your mother. What are some things you saw, or did you see anything in your mom? You moved home to help take care of your grandmother, help your mom take care of your grandmother. Did you
Hmm.
see any of these symptoms in her?
Definitely. So one of the main things that I noticed was just organization and keeping track of business affairs and bills and that sort of thing. So I kind of noticed that she wasn't doing a good job of that, and that's something that she's always been in charge of. And so she just had a lot of bills and paperwork, and I was just like, how are you even keeping track of this? And everything was just kind of spread out everywhere, and it was just a lot of chaos. And so that was one thing that I first kind of started like, okay, and I didn't necessarily think it was Alzheimer's. It was just a
Mm,
question of what is going on.
right.
um and then at work, because she was working full time, she was kind of starting to get behind at work. So that was another thing that kind of triggered me to start paying attention. And
Mm-hmm.
then also repeating yourself. So, getting to the point of, yeah, you just told me that, or yeah, I just told you that, or that is definitely a huge symptom that I know people start to see in these early stages when you're trying to figure out what's going on, is definitely that repeating themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's further along, so now we're more so in the middle stages, and so we get into the things of like confusion with time and place, or not knowing what day it is, or time, confusion with time and things like that. Um, Something else is changes in executive functioning, and so that's really decision making.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started having, first of all, we started having Publishers Clearinghouse send like so much mail to our house, and it really wasn't Publishers Clearinghouse. It was really just lots of scams and fraud, and it was just so much mail from them. But she was actually responding to these, and so if they were like, send us $25 for a processing fee or things like that, she was actually sending them money. And so those types of decisions are things that she probably would not have made previously, or even scammers calling the house and her entertaining them over the phone. Again, that's executive functioning that someone who was 100% in their, cognitive mind probably wouldn't happen. And don't be mistaken. Seniors and people in general are, scammed all the time, as we know, but just these things start to add up, and you start to realize that, something might not be right.
Right. You mentioned the stages. I wanted to just kind of go through the stages, at least present the stages, and we have some questions from the audience that I will bring up. But the stages are, there's considered seven stages. I'll go through those. There may be something different. I'll share what I have. And
Mhm.
those seven stages, stage one is there's no impairment. During this stage, Alzheimer's is not even detectable and no memory problems and no other symptoms. You're asymptomatic, and we're used to that term.
Mhm.
Stage two is very mild decline. The senior may notice minor memory problems, lose things around the house, although they're not at a point where the memory loss can be even distinguished. It's just like, oh, I don't know where I put that. Where are those keys?
Mhm.
This person will do well on memory tests, and the disease is unlikely to be detected by loved ones or even physicians at this point. Then you get the mild decline. Number two is the very mild. It's just like it's something there and you can't quite put your finger on it. Stage three is the family members and friends of the senior may begin to notice cognitive problems. Performance on memory tasks are affected by physicians, and physicians will now be able to detect that there is some impairment. People in stage three will have difficulty finding the right words during conversation, organizing and planning, remember names of a few acquaintances. People with stage 3 Alzheimer's may also frequently lose personal possessions, including valuables. Stage 4 is the moderate decline. In stage 4 of Alzheimer's, clear cut symptoms of the disease are apparent. People with stage 4 Alzheimer's have difficulty with simple arithmetic, have poor short term memory, may not recall what they ate for breakfast, for example. Inability to manage finances or paying bills, may forget details about their own life history. Stage 5 is this moderately severe decline. During this stage, they begin to need help with day to day activities. People in stage 5 of the disease may experience difficulty dressing appropriately, inability to recall simple details about themselves, such as their own phone number, and have significant confusion. On the other hand, people in stage 5 maintain functionality. They typically can still bathe and toilet independently. They may also still know their family members and some detail about their personal histories, especially their childhood and youth. Two more stages, and one number six is the severe decline. People with stage 6 Alzheimer's need constant supervision and frequently require professional care. These symptoms include confusion or awareness of environmental surroundings, inability to recognize faces except for the close friends and relatives, inability to remember the most personal details of their own history, loss of bladder and bowel control, major personality changes, and potential behavior problems. The need for assistance with activities of daily living, such as toileting and bathing, and then they begin to wander. In the final stage, that's stage 7, the very severe decline, stage 7 um, is now its terminal illness. People in this stage are nearing death. In this stage of the disease, people lose the ability to communicate or respond to their environment. While they may still be able to utter words or phrases, they have no insight into their condition and need assistance with all activities of daily living. In the final stage of Alzheimer's, people may lose their ability to swallow. So, those are the stages that I'm aware of.
Mhm.
Did I get it right?
Yeah, actually, you did. This is actually a good list, and so this is a really specific list, and I think it's a good list. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of times, I use early, middle, and late,
Mm-hmm.
which is not quite as specific as this list because what I find is that some of these symptoms cross over
Mm-hmm.
into different stages.
Yes.
So, something that might have been on the list in 4, they might have started doing that when they were at stage 3. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's not an exact science.
Right.
A lot of people want to know, tell me what stage my loved one is in. And I've never really been that person because to me, it really didn't matter. To me personally, it didn't
Mm-hmm.
matter what stage they were in. To me, early, middle, and late was enough for me to kind of have an idea, of where we are. And I could pretty much figure that out on my own. And now that I've actually been through this entire journey, with my grandmother, and I'm going through it again with my mom, I kind of have a little more knowledge about what to expect.
Because it is progressive, you're right. And
Mhm.
with so many diseases and disorders, you have a list, you have an order, but right, it doesn't have to progress this way.
Mhm.
Um, and it's these are the steps, but yeah, a person doesn't have to say, I'm going to be one, two, three, four, five, six, seven.
Mhm.
No, I may be
Mhm.
one, six, two, four.
Mhm.
It can go out of order, and you
And
have parts of the different stages at different points.
right, and I think it's important to make that clear because
Mm-hmm.
people get locked into, certain things. Well, they're not doing this, so they must not be here. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
well,
Right.
this is on the list, and I don't see them doing this. So I think it's, important just to this. But again, this is a very good list. It's a very clear list, and having gone through all of these stages, I recognize,
Mm-hmm.
everything on here. So yes.
And I chose that one because it does at least break for me, and not being as familiar with this, it breaks it down at least and shows you how many different things we can look for. You
Mhm.
go from one all the way down to seven. There's so many different things that we can look for. I wanted
Mhm.
to bring up a question. Someone said, just in listening to this topic, is this why we should have the conversation with parents or other relatives about medical directives and power of attorney so someone can take care of our affairs? You mentioned you had to um, step in and now take care of your mom. Your mom had to
Mhm.
take care of her mom. And
Mhm.
the idea of the medical directive, there's so much involved with that, but that is one of
Mhm.
the things that when you're in your so called right mind, as people say,
Mhm.
making the decision of who you want to take over for you. What are
Mhm.
your thoughts about that?
Absolutely. There's actually one of the things. There's a list of things that I recommend people do when they're starting off on this journey, and one of them is to look at legal and financial affairs, the medical directives, the will, and all of that paperwork, and make sure that all of that is in order while you or while your loved one is still able to do so. So definitely, that's definitely why that conversation needs to be had as early as possible, and even I mean, even in your, 40s and 50s, it's good to have that stuff in place because you never know what might happen. Even if it's not Alzheimer's, it might be something else. So
Eh,
definitely.
Definitely, and that's what I wanted to share. This is something that, and thank you, Eugene, for bringing that up. This is something I wanted to share on that. Thinking about the end of life is something no one wants to do. We'll just be honest.
Mhm.
That's not a
Mhm.
topic we want to discuss. However, end of life issues are real for all of us, and it will happen to all of us, and we don't know when. The
Mhm.
benefit of knowing early and planning early is that if something devastating happens, you're not stuck. I mean, someone could have a car accident and it leave them
Mhm.
debilitated, and they're
Mhm.
unable to do things, and nothing is in place. No one knows
Mhm.
if you're single. Okay, you
Mhm.
don't have the husband who is you share a bank account with, for instance. So you're single and nobody knows the passwords to your bank account. No
Right.
one knows anything about it, and you're stuck, and you are now can't communicate.
Right.
It's not a topic we like to talk about, but it's real. So, in thinking about that, I encourage everyone out there, especially the single people who
Mhm.
may, you're single. I'm single. I'm on my own. And
Mhm.
when I think about it, man, nobody can get in my bank account.
Mhm.
What if they needed something, So we need to have that person you can share this with so that so that somebody can be there for you. Or
Right.
who do you want to have your medical power of attorney? And I agree with you. It's not just because you're a senior.
Right.
If you're 20 and single and nobody knows anything, anything can happen to you.
Mhm.
It's a very sobering thought, and you definitely don't think about it in your 20s.
Mhm.
However, the reality, even in your 20s and 30s, you need to think, who is my backup? If someone happened to me, who do I want to be able to make decisions for me?
Right.
This wasn't on the list, but I want to share this that there is something called the five wishes. And what the five wishes is, it is, in some states, it's actually a legal document very similar to a will. And with the five wishes, what it is, you go through and you answer various questions about your end of life decisions. And
Mhm.
the way it relates to this, people with, before, if you find yourself in early dementia stages and you know that it's a disease that is progressive, this is the time you would want to do this. You talk about what you want your end of life to look like. You talk about, do I want to be, do I want you to pull the plug? Do I want you to put me on a respirator? Do I want
Mhm.
music playing when I'm, when the last days? Do I want it makes you go through all of these things. In the beginning of next year, I'll be hosting, probably will still be on Zoom then, a Zoom class on the five wishes. And it really doesn't matter what age you are. This is something I think you could benefit from.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to be in light of that question. But I want to know this: how much support is there for people with Alzheimer's of and dementia? And in terms of support, I mean, like, are there day centers? Are there places? Because if you're the caregiver, you need a break sometimes too. Now,
Right.
what was it like pre-COVID, and what's it like now?
So clearly, we are living in a different world now, and especially for us caregivers, because if you're taking care of a senior citizen, hopefully, or you are likely even being more careful with COVID than if you were alone. So that means that your social interactions, as well as your loved ones, are going to be limited. Um, Before COVID, there's lots of senior programs run by the city. There were senior day centers. There's a senior day center there's one in McKinney, I believe, and then I know there's one in DeSoto where I live, and it is specifically for those with Alzheimer's. And so it's called Friends Place, and my mom has gone there, my grandmother has gone there, but basically they have activities all day um, for your loved one. It's they provide meals, they do activities all day, they play games, and that was an option for us before COVID. Fortunately, Friends Place, once COVID hit and they were forced to shut down, they actually started doing Zoom activities. So my mom has been able to participate in Zoom activities with them. And by Zoom activities, I mean they do like share exercise in the morning, they do bingo, they do sing alongs, and just, different types of stuff that you can do over Zoom. So that's been good for that. Also, there's an organization or an agency called Area Agency on Aging, and they provide a lot of assistance for seniors. So before COVID, they provided respite care grants or vouchers rather, for lack of a better word, where you could sign up for a respite care voucher with them, and it would cover someone, a sitter coming to your house. I believe they've started that service back, but it is the Area Agency on Aging. You can just Google it, and even in other cities they have Area Agency on Aging. So,
Mm-hmm.
but they also provide medical supplies. They do home repairs. They do meal delivery. They do Medicare benefits counseling. So pre-COVID and now, it's definitely a good resource for seniors and caregivers. And then also the Alzheimer's Association is also another organization that provides a lot of support, education. Um, they're still doing like online classes and whatnot for support for caregivers, where you can learn more about the disease, learn more about coping, and that sort of thing. But those are three major organizations that I know provide support for both caregivers and the care recipient. So it's Friends Place, Area Agency on Aging, and the Alzheimer's Association.
And you're going to find agency on aging in most cities,
Mhm.
and as well as a branch of the Alzheimer's Association. So that's good. We have a
Mhm.
question. Do you know about Spanish speaking adults, or where you can refer them? Do these agencies that you mentioned offer help for Spanish speaking people?
Absolutely. Area Agency on Aging and the Alzheimer's Association offer services for Spanish speaking adults. So I would definitely say you can reach out to either one of those. They have programs and materials for
And the
Spanish
thing
speaking
about
adults.
both of those, they have information about specific programs in your area. So they will be
Mhm.
able to help you and assist with other day programs. They may know of things that are in your specific
Mhm.
geographic area, or, address your specific language.
Mhm.
You
Absolutely.
mentioned something I wanted to go back to. Talking about the Zoom, how does your mom adjusting to doing these things on Zoom? Just think, when you think of people who are of a certain age, number one,
Mhm.
and then they have cognitive difficulties, you wonder how that will work. So share with us how that's working with her, the Zoom.
It's actually working pretty well. So I ended up, so she was using my laptop, but I need my laptop to do my work. So I ended up buying her a tablet on Amazon so that she has, her own device. And so the chair exercise, I mean, they also, because it's Zoom, it's interactive. So, they're talking to them and she's at a stage now where she can still communicate and understand, what's going on. Um, I don't know if she fully understands, what Zoom is, but
Mm-hmm.
she sees someone on the screen, and it's kind of like a video chat or like a FaceTime or something like that. So she sees them on the screen, and they're good morning, Miss Shanklin, and good morning, Miss Johnson, and everyone, and then they just take them through the exercises. Bingo, of course, is really easy to do. Bingo is also something I recommend like families that's really easy to do. An activity if you have grandkids, they can play bingo with the grandparents over Zoom
Mm-hmm.
or over video chat. Um, and it's something that seniors tend to love a little bingo.
Right.
So, but yeah, it depends on what stage your loved one is in. If the Zoom activities will work, she just fortunately is at a stage where she can still participate.
Mm-hmm.
It also gives me a break because I can leave her there, with the tablet and with them and go to other parts of the house and do what I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there is the attention where sometimes they'll lose her attention and she'll get up and walk away. Um, but for the most part, as long as it's, they also do like I said, sing along. So if they're doing songs that she knows, like Motown songs or things like that, then it tends to keep her attention. So that it seems to be working for us. Again, it just depends on you know
Mm-hmm.
what stage they're in.
Right. We have someone who shared a situation about Alzheimer's and someone they know. Erica states, I was just talking to a girlfriend this evening about buying plots and prepaid funeral services. My girlfriend recently buried her dad last Saturday, and he had Alzheimer's late stages. He couldn't swallow, and they had to put a feeding tube in his stomach. And that's when you know it's near the end,
Right.
when your body just shuts down. And we were talking earlier about the five wishes and the planning. And even if it is buying, if you choose to buy funeral plots or prepaid
Mhm.
funerals, these are conversations that we need to have, just not in light of dementia and Alzheimer's, just because. These are conversations that are real, and
Absolutely.
I encourage people at any age, have them with your family. I'll share a funny story about my family. So we're a little different kind of people.
Mhm.
And my dad worked part time at a funeral home. He did that was his retirement job. He worked at a local funeral home.
Mhm.
And we were sitting around the dinner table one Thanksgiving. No one was ill. Everybody was good. And we were talking about funeral plots. My dad was big into, you should plan for your funeral. Of course, being affiliated
Mhm.
with funeral home, you should always know. So on Thanksgiving Day, we went to the funeral home and my parents picked out their caskets. It sounds crazy. They had matching caskets though. His was black, hers was ivory.
Oh wow.
And they were very similar. But the reason being it was so when they died, they had what they wanted. They knew what they
Right.
wanted. Everything was paid for in advance. We knew what their funerals would look like.
Right.
My mom early on would say who she wanted at her funeral, who on
Mhm.
program. That happened. My dad's funeral, we actually planned his service, the complete service, sitting at my kitchen table when I was still living in Houston, about a week after his brother died. We were talking
Mhm.
about that, and everything he wanted was there. And it actually was not a morbid time. We laughed because at that point my dad was in his 80s and he was talking about people who would be on the program. And the dad, they're too old. We want you to live a little longer. As old as they are, they can't. No. So we made it a fun thing. It doesn't have to be morbid. Like I said, my family's weird, but it worked. And so
Yeah.
both of my parents are deceased. We knew what they wanted.
Mhm.
And we had those conversations when everybody was up and well. And so this
Mhm.
is a time to let your desires be known. You can be in your
Mhm.
40s, like we said earlier, a car could come and hit you. You could have a car accident. And
Mhm.
people are left to wonder, why should they have to wonder?
Right. And we also live in a world of COVID where
Right?
people of all ages are,
Mm-hmm.
passing away. So.
And I encourage you to have those conversations with your children. They're not going to want to have it, but if for
Mhm.
parents out there, your teenagers, by the time they're old enough, I have a 17-year-old, and I
Mhm.
always say I want to be cremated. Da, da, da. Last year when we first had the conversation, he says, "Well, I'm not going to do it." I said, "Well, this is my wishes. I'm going to have it paid for." Well, Mom, you're not getting ready to die. You're going to be here a long time, and then I can pay for it. I don't want you to be cremated. And we actually had that conversation. We've kind of come back to it, but it let me know, what he was thinking. And it's okay
Mhm.
to have those kind. It wasn't, again, he's part of the family, so it wasn't that morbid to us. It was a very matter of fact thing. But you can have these conversations and let your wishes be known.
Mhm.
I wanted to switch for a minute and talk about the caregiver role.
Mhm.
You are definitely in that role. Tell us about Dementia Care Warriors before we talk about you personally. What your role led you to start this organization? So tell us about a little more. You mentioned it in the beginning. Tell us a
Mhm.
little more about how you started it and why you needed to start it.
So it actually started from a blog. So I used to have a blog when I first started. When I first became a caregiver, I started a blog called "Be Myself and I," and so it was tools, tips, and resources for the dementia caregiver. And I started the blog because I really didn't see. I mean, there's a lot of information spread around the internet, and I kind of just wanted to provide a space to share my story, to share some funny stories, to provide a more lighthearted space for caregivers. And so it's so interesting that I say this now after 7 years. When I first started, all the blogs that I saw were very sad and, came from a very like dark and sad and depressing place. And when I first became a caregiver, I was like, why are all these blogs so sad? Oh my gosh. And I'm more of an upbeat, happy person, generally speaking, or was 7 years ago. But here we are 7 years later, and I'm like, oh, I get it. I get why all the blogs were so sad because this is a very challenging, a very hard, and a very lonely role, for a lot of caregivers. And so I kind of, got an understanding. And so what I do with Dementia Care Warriors is try to provide a space for caregivers. We started off doing a support group happy hour in person pre-COVID. And so we would meet up just for a more casual, laid back support group. Before I started that support group, I've, like I said, been doing this for years. So I've been to a number of support groups. I've actually facilitated other support groups, and the demographic never really looked like me. It was always older. It was always not many African Americans, if any. And so I know that there is an entire generation of caregivers that are my peers, and you don't really think of us when you think of caregivers. You think of my mother's generation as caregivers, but there's a whole generation of younger caregivers out here who don't necessarily have the same issues and the same concerns personally when it comes to our lives and working caregiving into our lives. So I started the support group happy hour. It went really well. We always had great laughs, great times. And then when COVID came, I ended up taking it online, and so we've been meeting online for since March. And so it's basically kind of a little tribe that we've, come to. I've actually had a couple of my of the ladies in my group had their mothers passed away since COVID started. So, but just the Dementia Care Warriors is a place to provide support for caregivers. Pretty much is what it comes to. Something else that I was starting pre-COVID, and I actually did one. I did a paint and sip for caregivers and their loved ones.
Mm.
So a lot of times, we're dropping them off at an activity or something like that. But I wanted to do something that everyone could participate in. So I hosted a paint and sip. I actually had a professional artist come and lead us through a painting where, our mothers painted and we painted. And so that was a
Mm.
lot of fun. The ladies said they loved it. And so I was starting the series of monthly events. And so we did the next one was actually going to be karaoke. I had the place reserved, and everything. And then I was going to do bowling and just activities that our loved ones could still participate in, along with us. And so, but thanks to COVID, those activities I'm not are put on hold, but hopefully I will be able to start that back up. But the paint tip was definitely a fun outing.
That is COVID won't last forever. Those are
Right.
awesome ideas. And believe
Hmm.
it or not, I want to read a few comments um, because we're out of time. Eugene says he lost part of himself while taking care of his mom, who passed on with colorectal cancer, and he was that caregiver. You lose
Hmm.
part of yourself. Kanetra says it's hard losing a loved ones. My heart and prayers go out to all of you. She also talked about being the caregiver for her uncle who has schizophrenia. So, in your last comment, I'd like to know what advice do you have to someone who's just a caregiver? I know because they're a caregiver for someone who is difficult, and your
Hmm.
role and your path has been a caregiver for someone with dementia, and we have other examples of caregivers here. What could you say, just from a caregiver point of view? What could you say to someone who's starting this journey, who's in the middle of this journey? Just and you've already been through the beginning, middle, of end in terms of your grandmother's demise. You've seen
Hmm.
this whole role. What could you say to
Hmm.
them?
Um, so self care is so important on this journey because it's gonna sound cliche, but like they say, put on your oxygen mask before you do others, or else you won't be able to help them. So self care is definitely something that's really important. A couple things that have helped me are support groups and being around other caregivers and getting advice from other caregivers and just having a shoulder to lean on of someone who understands what you're going through, especially Alzheimer's and dementia caregivers because it's a different type of disease that we're dealing with. So support groups, journaling has also been really helpful for me. I use an app called Day One app. And sometimes when I'm just by myself, I just, pour into the app whatever my thoughts are for the day or whatever crazy thing happened that day because I don't necessarily have anyone else to share it with. And it's just like, I got to get this out of my head. And then also therapy. Don't be, it's kind of taboo in our community, but don't be afraid to seek out therapy and having that outside resource and source to talk to and be able to, vent to and talk to is also really helpful. So those are three things that have really been helpful for me on my caregiving journey.
Thank you so much, Veronica. And those are some awesome tips because they're caregivers. So if you know of anyone um, who is a caregiver, anyone who has dementia or Alzheimer's, invite them to listen to this again. They can catch it on Facebook or go to YouTube and type in Thinking Thursday with Bronwyn, and they can hear and maybe benefit from it. And we always like to end with my call to action. And for this week, the call to action is this: take care of every aspect of your health because remember, I believe mental health is health. It's all our health. If you need to have a screening because it's time for a certain screening, find a way to make it happen. By that, last month we talked about breast cancer awareness. We've talked about the different colon cancer screenings, and not just because of age, but because of family history. There are organizations, they may be hard to find, that you can get it at a low or no cost. Put the time in it. Take care of your health. Number two, as we enter the holiday season, find ways to give, not just financial, give of yourself. You will find that as you're giving to others, you're going to receive a lot just because you're giving. And then lastly, practice self care daily. Breathe, breathe, breathe. That self care is so important. If you find yourself in a truly stressful state and need a therapist, need someone to talk to, just as our guest mentioned, maybe I'm that person for you. And if not, I will help you find someone. But as a therapist, I have found more and more people now in need of assistance managing anxiety. Give me a call, reach out 682 272 3949. I'm all teletherapy right now, not any face to face, so you can be in many different places. I'm licensed in the state of Texas, so if you are in the state of Texas, reach out. If you're not, maybe I can help you find someone where you are. 682 272 3949. And as I like to always say, mental health is health. So take care of your health. And we'll see you next week. Thanks again, Veronica.
Thank you.